Uzi's impact on the way League of Legends is played professionally is still felt every day, even today. He was one of the early pioneers in League esports who helped redefine how a role should be played forever. He redefined the meaning of carry in AD carry, while everyone else thought it meant something totally different, and with an entire nation on his back, changed League of Legends forever. In this Skillcapped LoL esports collaboration, we're going to break down how Uzi introduced some of the most game-changing, most impactful, and most impressive concepts to the game that you can still use today to carry like Uzi, considered to be one of, if not the greatest AD carry of all time. So many players, even if they're new to League, may have heard of Uzi's greatness in the past, but it's hard to quantify how a single player could actually change a role forever. Surely, this is hyperbole, right? Well, let's take a trip to the past to see how ADC was played before Uzi came into the scene. Here's Piglet, one of the best ADCs of this era in Season 3, and a literal world champion. Piglet, like every other ADC, had the standard ADC mindset of how a teamfight should play out, as most solo queue players do today as well. It's simple, but makes sense. When a team fight starts, whichever ADC lives the longest will likely win the fight. Why? Because while most other champions are ability focused and have downtime in their damage, ADCs are unique in that they deal consistent DPS. So, as long as you stay alive and keep dealing damage, that's how you win fights. And that's exactly how a player like Piglet played fights out back in the day. Notice his extremely safe positioning towards the back of the fight at all times, prioritizing staying alive. His extreme safety even causes him to miss windows of opportunity to deal damage. It's only when the fight is clearly over that he finally commits to moving forward to clean up the Caitlyn. As you can see, all AD carries could think about was staying alive. And then came Uzi.
Uzi is coming in from the backside. Surprise! Here comes the Vayne. Kill for White. San's not going to escape this one. They focus down Uzi. Well, look at him. He's still alive. He's still surviving. He stays alive.
Uzi was the very first ADC pro to truly understand that everyone's idea of how you should position in fights was backwards. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that everyone thought ADCs are easy to kill and used it to dominate teamfights, which was the exact opposite of how most ADCs played at the time. To every bot lane player watching this, think about it. What's the biggest issue you have whenever you queue up a game as a marksman? You just get one shot every fight, right? Well, what Uzi did was take that idea and turn it against his opponents. Everyone is always looking to focus the ADC because they think it's a free kill and what will immediately win the teamfight. So Uzi started making plays like these. Versus Fnatic, he W forward as Corki, baiting Orianna's ultimate out and immediately flashing backwards. Not only was he baiting out extremely impactful abilities, but you can see Soaz on Zac gets tunnel vision on killing the ADC by how aggressively Uzi is playing and overextends trying to kill him. While every other ADC was just trying to stay alive in the early days of Pro League, Uzi was doing this. He was in the front of the fight versus a fed Syndra, baiting and barely sidestepping her deadly combo, then Wing forward towards 4 players on his own. And you can see the effect in real time. Everyone on EDG could have just ran, but an ADC just jumped forward. Uzi has to be trolling, right? Wrong. Uzi knew his limits so absurdly well that he would constantly bait his opponents out with his aggressive positioning, which no other ADC would dare to do. Uzi may not have realized it himself at the time, but his absurdly aggressive positioning would soon become the foundation for how pro ADCs should play. Uzi was the main driving force in creating forward ADC, and every single pro bot laner copies this style to this day, as it is the most effective way to carry teamfights as a marksman. Let's break it down. To put it simply, it's when a marksman in a teamfight stands either parallel or even slightly ahead of their own teammates in the front line. This has a lot of unseen benefits. For starters, you can test space way more aggressively. Imagine that while a teamfight is brewing, both ADCs are standing towards the back of it. They don't have a lot of pressure, so the melee champions up front can contest space a lot more freely. Whereas if you're positioned forward as a ranged champion, it makes it much harder for the enemy melee champions to maneuver in the fight. The threat of taking a lot of damage will often force them to concede space, giving your team the advantage. But the biggest upsides of standing so aggressively definitely have to do with the fact that the enemy players will be hyper-focused on you being so far forward. Keep in mind, pro players are obviously human. They have to decide what takes priority for their attention in fights. So for example, as Uzi jumps forward as Tristana in this fight, think about what Ruler and Crown are probably thinking. Oh, there's a super strong Tristana in front of us, but we're both in range to kill her. We should turn. But because all their attention is on Uzi, they forget about everyone else, letting Xiao Hu land the easiest double stun of his life. Crown even had flash up, but he was paying so much attention to Uzi, he didn't even react to the very obvious stun coming his way. Of course, there is a clear risk to playing so aggressively as an ADC. If you're the one who gets caught out by enemy spells, you might instantly flop in the fight. In fact, that was a major issue for ADCs trying to copy Uzi's playstyle at first. In this fight between Fnatic and CLG, you can see Reckless begin to walk up a little in the fight, only to immediately be Leona ulted. He had flash, but didn't react in time. Likewise, Doublelift tries to go forward to win the fight, only to immediately get caught out by a Morgana binding, again with his flash up. This is what set Uzi apart from every other pro ADC for so long. He actually had the mechanics to play forward and not immediately blow up. Now you could say that was just his insane reaction time, but watching his games, it seems he just pre-planned what he was going to do every fight. If you go into every fight knowing exactly what the biggest dangers to your life are, then it's a lot easier to track those key spells in the middle of pure chaos, which is what made Uzi seem like he had godlike reaction speeds. And his ability to stay alive unlocked the biggest benefit of all when it comes to playing a forward ADC in fights, baiting bad engages. If you are positioned forward in a fight, fighting for space and getting free damage off with your range, the enemy team cannot ignore that. They, at some point, must contest you. If they don't, they'll just lose the game for free. What you have to understand, though, is that at a pro level, engaging is really difficult. Engages can easily be flashed out of, which can immediately lose the fight for the initiating team. By playing so aggressively, the thing Uzi realized that no other ADC did for years is that he was forcing enemy teams to engage faster. His pressure gave them less time to sit around and wait for a perfect opportunity. One of the best examples of this was Uzi's brilliant positioning in this fight versus Fnatic in the 2018 MSI group stage. As Fnatic force an Elder Dragon fight, Uzi marches forward, forcing Bwipo and Hylissang to concede space and use spells to stop his approach. This gives his teammates space to walk forward, but unfortunately Caps lands a massive chunk of damage, forcing RNG back once more. Fnatic secures the Elder Dragon and things look grim, but Uzi decides to take the fight into his own hands. He walks so aggressively into Bwipo and Hylissang that they both panic. Hylissang thinks Uzi is trolling, so he gets baited into wasting his ult, as Uzi casually walks back to safety, and Bwipo gets baited into walking forward, into a ton of damage for free. From there, Uzi makes a brilliant move and casts his ult towards Fnatic's carries. Pay attention to this teamfight layout, as this is exactly how you want to punish enemy teams in solo queue. By playing so aggressively, Bwipo thought Uzi had made a mistake casting his ultimate and committed to try and punish him, but the rest of Fnatic isn't in range to help him at all, as they're zoned off by the feathers. Uzi basically mind-controlled Bwipo into serving himself up on a silver platter, scoring his team a free kill. Then they kill his passive and move forward to fight the 5v4. Uzi waits for the perfect moment to strike, and
he's not dead yet! Finally, Xiao Hu takes him down!
Well, he just flashes in with pure style to auto Fnatic to death, as their front line fell apart. That's exactly the type of team fighting that set Uzi so far ahead for years over other ADCs. He actually controlled the pace of the fight rather than just playing things safe and waiting to auto attack. As an ADC, it's super easy to be complacent while standing behind your front line, hitting enemy tanks, and just hoping you can out DPS the enemy team. But playing that way is precisely why it feels like ADC has no agency in their games. It's all up to your team to engage properly and set you up for success. But being proactive in how fights are played out and taking risks with his positioning is precisely how Uzi redefined the ADC role, and why everyone copies him to this day. Look at this insane positioning. He's sandwiching himself between 4 players, but he got away with it because of his insane micro movements in fights that you can really only appreciate when you slow them down. And no fight highlights just how precise Uzi's movement is better than in the 2018 MSI Finals when facing the legendary Kingzone team. As Uzi contests the mid push, Prey and Gorilla look to engage on him with a Varus ultimate out of nowhere. Everyone on Kingzone collapses with Gangplank ult and Sion drifting down the lane, but Uzi keeps calm. He realizes they're committing a lot into him, so notice how he waits till the last possible second to flash, baiting BDD into the tower. This lets Ming push him even further out of position, which lets them chunk BDD for half his health. From there, Kingzone realizes their engage has gone poorly and are looking to retreat as Xiao Hu comes in. Like we did before, let's take stock of the positioning of all players in this fight. Notice how Kingzone are all in range to hit Xiao Hu the second he's going to come out of his pool. On the other hand, RNG is lagging behind and aren't really in range to threaten anyone besides maybe a full health Peanut. Now, pay attention to Uzi. He walks up to Prey, Gorilla, and Khan, jukes back a bit, throws a Q, and RNG win the fight. If you don't understand what just happened, you're about to learn in our special Skillcapped tip why Uzi was still the best teamfighting ADC in the world even late into his career. An extremely important concept for every role to understand when it comes to fighting in League is uptime. You want to maximize how often you're hitting your opponents. This is especially true as an ADC since your damage comes from auto attacks with no cooldowns. But you do not need to have 100% uptime to win fights. You simply need to have more uptime than your opponents. So, for example, if you're only hitting someone 20% of the time, that is still good if your opponent can only hit your team 5% of the time. Even though you're not doing anything 80% of the time, you're still winning out over your opponents not having uptime at 95% of the time. Going back to the fight, that's the concept that allowed Uzi to dominate Kingzone. Pay very close attention as he walks up to Prey, because Uzi's micro movements are absolutely insane here. He walks up and pretends he's going to auto while Prey casts E, but he reads that Prey is going to turn and tethers him perfectly. Prey, wanting to maximize his uptime, turns right back to the fight, and Uzi reads that and turns at the exact same moment to Q him and walk forward. This is the impossible dilemma Uzi put Prey into within seconds of this fight. If Prey wants to help his team, Uzi will just threaten him with autos and Qs, but if he tries to contest Uzi, he just tether him again and waste his time. It's a no-win situation. Prey has no good options. That's why at this moment, you can see Uzi ready to tether back again, expecting Prey to contest him once more. But Prey showed proper respect. He knew Uzi wasn't going to misplay and decided to just let his frontline die, as this was a hopeless situation. And that's how Uzi destroyed this fight. He baited perfectly at the start, getting BDD super low to begin with, and with perfect spacing at the end, he gave his team uptime on the enemy frontline while denying 3 players uptime on his. Even though he didn't do any damage here, his brilliant positioning moves won the fight immediately. Hopefully it's clear just how much value positioning on the front lines as an ADC can provide. Although Uzi has long since retired, you can still see his playstyle in full effect to this day. Watch any pro ADC and they'll almost always be in the front lines, building space and baiting enemies in teamfights. This is Uzi's legacy and why he'll never be forgotten. He figured out the best way to play ADC years before anyone else and perfected it to become one of the most iconic ADCs of all time. Thanks for watching.